Hello, welcome to this video. On this video, I'm going to be going through 10 incredible guitar solos you've never heard, and I'm going to be pulling them from the jazz rock genre, specifically from the genre when jazz rock ruled the world somewhere between 75 and 1980, when the record labels are pouring in tons of money for people to go into the studio, record some of the most outlandish music going. Now, of course, a lot of guitarists grow up listening to rock guitarists, and we're very aware that there was sort of a renaissance in rock guitar in the 1980s, when guitarists started to do all sorts of shredding and neoclassical stuff and weird scales and modes and all that type of thing. Before that, many of the rock guitarists, were just coming out of sort of the blues and blues rock genre. And when we compare some of the legendary guitarists from the 1970s, like Jimmy Page or Ritchie Blackmore, Eric Clapton or Tony Iommi, and we start to compare them to Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, and then people like Sean Lane and, all these types of players, we can see that there was a huge jump in technical ability on the guitar. Now, the reason for this is because guitar playing had an injection from the genre of jazz rock. Once the jazz guitarists plugged in and started to play heavy and loud, they brought a virtuosity to guitar which was unheard of. We can really see this going back to guitarists like Larry Coryell and then John McLaughlin, and then you had guitarists like Al Di Meola coming in, and then later Alan Holdsworth, and this lifted the technical ability of guitar playing. Now, what's interesting is, of course, this influence hits the world of jazz rock first. Now, I recently did a video called The Evolution of Jazz Rock Guitar, and on that I sort of put forward this theory that John McLaughlin and Larry Coryell and Al Di Meola weren't the full picture, that they were really urged on by the incredible hybrid of jazz and rock that Jimi Hendrix had pioneered in the late 60s, especially on tracks like Machine Gun. And so what I found fascinating is around about 1975, two guitarists had really come in and changed the sound of jazz rock guitar. One was Tommy Bolin on the album Spectrum, and the other was Ray Gomez on a variety of albums, mainly albums with Stanley Clarke like School Days, and on the Lenny White album Venusian Summer. These guitarists combined the fire of John McLaughlin, the high-speed picking and all that, but they also brought in a genuine feel for the blues, and I think that became the defining style. Now, in researching that video, I started to go back to a whole bunch of guitar solos that I grew up listening to, which I thought were amazing, but weren't so well known, I think, to the general public, and I thought it'd be really interesting to try and explore that on a video and to actually play you the guitar solo. So I'm not going to be monetized on this. I was saying now, if you enjoy this, put somebody in the PayPal tip jar, because I'm not going to be making any money off this, but you will get to hear all the guitar solos I'm talking about. This is going to be a really exciting video, so sit back and we're going to get into 10 guitar solos that you've probably never heard that are amazing, or words to that effect. So let's kick straight in at number 10 with a guitarist called Daryl Stuermer. Now, Daryl Stuermer, I've started off with him because you may well know him because he ended up being the guitarist in the live version of Genesis. And there he did a very workmanlike session job of playing all the guitar parts that were needed that Mike and the boys couldn't cover with their guitar playing. So we know that he can play anything, and the members of Genesis have often said, Daryl can play anything. But what is less well known is he'd had a career in the second half of the 1970s in the world of jazz rock, probably most notably with Jean-Luc Ponty, where he, on the album Enigmatic Ocean, goes head-to-head with Alan Holdsworth and holds his own, actually more than holds his own. He's quite incredible on that album. The track that I want to play you by Daryl Stuermer is off a George Duke album called I Love the Blues, She Heard Me Cry, and the track is called That's What She Said, and the guitar solo goes like this. So I hope that's got you in the mood for some fiery alternate picking, crazy bends, outside playing. Some of these guitarists in the late 70s that I grew up with listening to, the harmonic sophistication of their playing was quite remarkable. And I feel that this is something that you don't get so much in the big renaissance of guitar playing that happened in the 1980s. Because, of course, guitar playing in terms of rock guitar lifts, doesn't it, in the 1980s? Great as though Jimmy Page and Ritchie Blackmore and Eric Clapton and Tony Iommi are, they're a different type of player to the Steve Vai's, Joe Satriani's and Vinnie Moore's that emerged in the 1980s. Now, that lift in virtuosity came, I believe, from guitarists like John McLaughlin and Al Di Meola. But that influence hit jazz rock first, and towards the end of the 70s, we had a whole host of guitarists that were really just blowing everybody away. And some of them came from a jazz background and some of them came from a rock background. Now, of course, on the video where I went through the evolution of jazz rock, I really put this sort of change down to the 1973 album Spectrum with Tommy Bolin. Tommy Bolin, of course, had come from a rock background. He'd played with Zephyr and then the James Gang, and he went on to play with Deep Purple. But his guitar playing on Spectrum is especially special, and it combines a sort of abandon that you expect from jazz, but with a dirt and fire that you would get from rock music. I feel that after Spectrum, Tommy Bolin didn't really fulfill his potential, but there's a couple of moments where he's absolutely burning. On his first solo album, Teaser, he teamed up with the incredible Narada Michael Walden on drums and Jan Hammer on keyboards, and he created a tune called Marching Powder. And this was quite incredible, and please listen out for Narada's drumming because it is equal to Tommy Bolin's guitar playing. This is as fiery as Fusion ever got. Here is Marching Powder. Now, I'm going to go sideways just to keep you interested. It's not going to be all late 70s jazz rock. I'm going to go actually back all the way to 1971 with an astonishing guitar solo by a guitarist called Ollie Halsall. Now, do you know him? I know some of you will, but he died from a drugs-related death, I think in the early 90s. And so his sort of reputation has not lifted to the same heights as a guitarist like Alan Holdsworth. Now, why would I pick Alan Holdsworth? I'll tell you why, because that style of play, that incredibly fluid legato approach, had been put on record before Alan on a Pato album back in 1971. And I believe Ollie was doing this sort of playing back in the late 1960s. Now, I'm not saying he invented it because Ollie and Alan were friends. And I think they cross-fertilised. But Ollie seemed to have got there quicker. And in his band Pato, he lays some quite incredible guitar playing. So there is an album by Pato came out in 1971. And there's a track on there called Giving It All Away. It's one of the most astonishing rock guitar solos you ever see. It's obviously very influenced by jazz, but at this stage in 1971, jazz rock had not really emerged. This is one of the most innovative, mind-blowing guitar solos you're ever going to hear. Remember, this is 1971. Holdsworth doesn't come out with bundles with Soft Machine until 1975. Now, Ollie Halsall is not Holdsworth. Imagine Alan Holdsworth, but it's a guy that is wired and out of control, unafraid to go down any avenue, and sometimes go down avenues that have dead ends only to spin around the spot and get back out of there. I always feel like Ollie is playing by the seat of his pants. It's always exciting, and it's always quite jaw-dropping. So here we have the tune Giving It All Away by Pato with Ollie Halsall on guitar. I often feel that the godfather of jazz rock is Larry Coryell, and the godfather of jazz rock guitar is Larry Coryell. And I feel that John McLaughlin came in and stole his thunder. Now, one thing that Larry had over John, I believe, was a greater feel for the blues. So a lot of the things I'm laying at, Tommy Bolin's door, and also guitarists like Ray Gomez, I feel that Larry was doing. But Larry could burn the same as John McLaughlin if he needed to. And I'm about to play you a track that's actually by Michael Urbaniak, who died recently, who was a jazz rock fusion violinist from Poland. And he made a series of albums, Fusion 1, Fusion 2, Fusion 3. They're all classics. The heaviest is probably the Fusion 2 album, which has become a real classic amongst jazz rock fusion aficionados. But I'm actually going to go and visit Fusion 3. And on this, Larry Coryell comes in and sort of takes on that sound that John McLaughlin pioneered. And I think, is at least equal to John on here, if not even a little bit more fiery. This is quite an incredible guitar solo, and it might change your opinion about Larry Coryell as a guitarist, because I feel a lot of people see him as being sort of John McLaughlin light, and it's not correct. He has a way of phrasing, he has a way of a tonality, a way of playing vibrato, use of chromatic lines, which is all of his own. So this is a track called Bloody Kishka off the album Fusion 3 with Larry Coryell. quite incredible. And the thing I love about the guitar solos at this point is the guitar tone. The guitar tone is so liquid, and you feel that they're in the room with the musicians, and that sort of heaviness and lumpedness that we had with the sort of 80s rock guitar virtuoso, where you feel the guitar solos were dialed in and overdubbed. You don't feel that with these. You feel that the guys are playing and they're reacting, and although the virtuosity is off the scale, you also hear little, not mistakes, but just little bits of roughness and well, I call it feel. Do you remember feel? Does everybody remember feel? To paraphrase Robert Plant. So I'm going to go to a guitarist here where it's all about tone, it's all about the bends, it's all about the note choice. What this guitarist is doing on this track is fascinating in terms of note choice. It's not jazz guitar vocabulary, it's something else. More like implied synthetic scales. It's wonderful. It's a guitarist that is probably more well known than some of the other guitarists on here, Steve Kahn, who was a staple of the session scene throughout the 70s, made a whole series of solo albums on his own, made albums with Larry Coryell. I think he played for a while with the Brecker Brothers, and later on sort of replaced Wayne Shorter in Weather Report when they moved to becoming Weather Update for a few years. He formed a supergroup in the mid-70s with Alphonso Johnson, Billy Cobb, and George Duke, which was great. They did an album called Alive Mother for You, which is a great album, never gets discussed. It's usually the sort of live on tour that gets discussed. But he also did a series of very intelligent, beautifully composed jazz rock fusion albums from the mid to late 70s. Eventually forming the band Eyewitness, which I've spoken about elsewhere. I really cannot sing the praises of Steve Kahn enough. He's such an incredible guitar player, a wonderful player. On his album Blue Man, on the title track Blue Man, he does an amazing guitar solo. Listen to the note choice and listen to the tone. So this is Blue Man by Steve Kahn. Right, we've had some Tommy Bolin already. The other guitarist I spoke about on my evolution of jazz rock guitar, and he became the cornerstone of that video, was the great Ray Gomez. Ray Gomez, for me, was up there with John McLaughlin, Al Di Meola, Larry Coryell, and Bill Connors. They were my fusion guitarists. Ray was so fiery, was so drippy with blues, and that sort of Hendrix end of the blues world. But he could also play incredibly exploratory. And I love the way he gets in there and he worries a phrase. There's a little bit of Coltrane there, but the phrases are always really bluesy and they're always really exciting. There's a whole host of guitar solos he did. One of them, his probably most famous guitar solo for fusion fans would be the one on the track School Days by Stanley Clarke. But I'm going to play you the incredible Mating Drive by the drummer Lenny White, off the album Venusian Summer. And I think this guitar solo that was recorded in 1975 really turned jazz rock fusion guitar on its head. I think this is a seminal guitar solo. He's using some sort of weird neutron phase thing or something, and it comes in every now and then. It's so psychedelic. The guitar seems otherworldly. The band they're just killing it. And I have to give special mention to Doug Roche, who's playing bass on this. One of the greatest bass players of the 1970s, one of the most innovative and important bass players, who died very young in 1978 of a drugs overdose, alongside the guy that's played Hammond organ on this, Larry Young. He didn't die of a drug overdose, but I think he died of something related to pneumonia. So this track has got two incredibly late and great musicians on. It's just burning. So this is Mating Drive by Lenny White with Ray Gomez on guitar. I think some of you will know the keyboardist Dave Sancious. Dave Sancious was discovered by Bruce Springsteen. He played in the E Street Band throughout the 1970s, started doing lots of session work. Bruce Springsteen was very important in getting him to have a record deal, and he made some incredible classic jazz rock albums throughout the 70s. But we're not here to talk about those albums and his keyboard playing. David Sancious is pretty good on guitar as well. And one of the things that I used to find so dumbfounding was the fact that, dumbfounding, is that a word? That I found quite curious, let's say, is on the Stanley Clarke album Journey to Love, we've got a whole bunch of guest guitarists on there, most notably Jeff Beck and John McLaughlin. That's a hell of a lineup of guitars. But on the epic concerto for jazz rock orchestra that finishes the band, we see David Sancious move on to guitar, and he plays one of the most wildest alternate pick frenzied, guitar solos, and he really sounds out of control. It's quite astonishing. So this is David Sancious playing the guitar solo on Concerto for Jazz Rock Orchestra. Right, a few years ago, the late, great Dean Brown died. I think he was a fantastic guitarist, came up at the same sort of time as Mike Stern and John Schofield. A really great guitarist that seemed to be able to take the guitarists we're talking about, who had melded this blues and jazz thing together, and he could really do it. I feel that Schofield and Mike Stern were the ones that really nailed it, influenced by these guys. Dean Brown was another guy. So I'm going to go a little bit later. I'm going to go to 1982 and the album Smoking by Billy Cobham, that also features Tim Landers on bass and Gil Goldstein on keyboards. And this is the incredible Red Baron off Spectrum. But for me, this one on this live album was always the definitive one because of Dean's incredible guitar solo. So this is Red Baron by Billy Cobham with Dean Brown on guitar. Right, we got to the last two, and these are the two real mysterious guitarists, and I wish I could tell you more about them. There was a guitarist in the late 70s called Peter Maunu. He was one of my favourite jazz rock players. I discovered him on the Billy Cobham album Magic, which he was incredible on. He then went on to form Group 87 with Terry Bozzio, which was like a super group that brought an album out towards the end of the 70s. What he's done since, I don't know. There's a few things he crops up here and there. I'm going to play you him playing on the Jean-Luc Ponty album, Cosmic Messenger, on the track Egocentric Molecules. This is astonishing guitar playing, and that's all I can say. And I wish I could tell you a little bit more about Mr. Maunu. And also, this has on it perhaps the greatest bass solo of all time. Is that Jacko? Is it Stanley now? I've got to be honest, for me, if you want to know what the great bass solo, it follows Peter Maunu on this track. It's the incredible Ralph Armstrong. And the thing I love about this, it's a bass solo. None of this flapping around on the top notes, trying to sound like a rubbish guitar. He plays a bass solo, and it's mind-blowing. Ralph Armstrong should be up there with the Jackos of Stanley Clarke. He was equal, and in some ways even way beyond them. So check out the bass solo on here. I've left a little bit of it on for you. Right, so we're right at the top of the number one. I put this on because it's an iconic guitar solo. I'm sure many of you will know it, but do you know the guitarist? Now, the guitarist seems to go by many names. Sometimes he crops up as George Johnson. Sometimes he crops up as Icarus Johnson. Sometimes he crops up as George Icarus Johnson. And on some websites, he crops up as Charles Johnson. Although I've been messaged by viewers of this channel and been told that Charles Johnson is not George Johnson and he's not Icarus Johnson. I'm confused. I bet you're confused. To make matters worse, when you research into this guy, he seemed to have emerged in the early 2000s with a political and quite contentious blog that he got known for. If any of these guitarists, especially Peter Maunu or George Icarus Johnson, are watching this, reach out, send me an email. Come on and tell us about what you did, because for me, you too are the unsung jazz rock guitarist of that period, and you were playing on all sorts of different things. George Icarus Johnson was a staple of George Duke's incredible fusion band that he had at the end of the 70s with Ndugu on drums, Byron Miller on bass. You had Napoleon Murphy Brock on vocals. This was a mind-warping band, and it's very underrated. And there's a whole host of incredible George Icarus Johnson guitar solos there, but I thought I'd go for the one that's really well known because it's so amazing. This is the last one on this video. This is the guitar solo off Life is Just a Game, which appeared on Stanley Clarke's School Days. The amount of time Stanley Clarke is backing up guitarists on this list is quite surprising. So this is the final guitar solo. So we'll have that, and I'll come on and say goodbye after this one. This video hasn't been, I've tried to do a short one with audio on. It's more like normal YouTubing, what other music YouTubers do. You know, so I hope you've enjoyed it. And like I said, if you did, subscribe and, you know, stick a bit of money in the old PayPal tip jar. So I will then feel it's worthwhile to put audio on other videos. You know, I'm not blackmailing you. I know it sounds like that. Anyway, let's not get into that now. This is Life is Just a Game by George Icarus Johnson on the Stanley Clarke album School Days. So I hope you enjoyed this little video. I've enjoyed making it, but much more importantly, I enjoyed researching it and going through some of these late 70s jazz rock fusion guitarists and championing them. Now, of course, there's even more obscure ones, but I'm going to have to go even deeper down about that. That's even more research. And of course, there's many ones that aren't that obscure that I haven't covered, especially the 1980s. And so, yeah, I know you're all going to say, what about in the comments? And do so, because I will check them out. I mean, where's Brian Godding? There you go. Now, I hope, let's see if anyone can beat that for obscurity. Anybody got anything more obscure than Brian Godding? What an incredible album he made in the late 1980s. One of the greatest jazz rock guitar albums ever made. So, yes, I've got stuff in the bank if I need it. And if you want to see it, then you know what you've got to do. Subscribe, like, join the Patreon, do all that. Thanks for watching this video. I'll see you on the next one.